Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Zone Star State podcast. I'm Matthew Brune, and joining me once again is Ishmael Johnson and Ish. Still in San Antonio after being there in person for LSU versus Texas in the Moody Center. First impressions of the Moody Center was it's awesome.
Yeah,
It's good.
yeah.
Very,
You
very
sent, you
good.
sent me a you sent me a photo of you from or the court from press view, and you were just like, this is
Yeah.
crazy.
Yeah, and the funny part is I was in they have the media section
Yep.
behind the away bench, kinda. So is
Mm-hmm.
LSU fans
Yeah.
all around us, and I don't know. I think most people could hear it on the broadcast, but they were loud,
It
like,
was a
the whole
pretty loud
game,
atmosphere from the LSU contingent. Yeah.
especially when LSU went up. I think it was 12. It was like
Mhm.
they were into it, and it was
Yeah.
crazy. But we'll start there.
Yep.
LSU versus Texas, a top 5 matchup on the women's side. Texas ends up getting the 65-58 win, coming back in the fourth quarter, down 5, going to the fourth, outscores LSU 21-9.
Mhm.
A really, really impressive showing down the stretch. Kind of not a pretty game from Texas, really
Yep.
from either side, but I think it was just Vic Schaefer being able to really make LSU uncomfortable once they turned up the pressure, they turned up the ball pressure, and they just won it with their defense, in my opinion, in the second half.
Yeah, I was gonna say I was gonna ask you from your perspective, because obviously you cover this from an LSU perspective, but what did Mulkey talk about as far as like went wrong for them? What was Vic Schaefer able to do that kind of disrupted LSU, particularly like you mentioned that fourth quarter?
Yeah, I think, well, first of all, Vic kind of played with some lineups that I don't think we'd really seen him kind of do before. Is always playing a true kind of 4 out there, whether it was Carlton earlier in the game or Tanda or so on. We saw
Mm-hmm.
them put Jordan Lee out there. She had a big 3 in the fourth quarter. We saw some Preston. We saw, I think some different, not small ball because they still played with the 5 for most of the time, but
Right.
1 through 4 was pretty small for them. So I thought that was interesting. And then that allowed them to really extend their pressure out, which I think was crucial. From LSU's perspective, LSU doesn't have a real point guard. So a lot of it is on like Michaela Williams to create
Yeah.
and so on. And when Texas turned up that pressure, it just really took LSU out of their offense. So to hold LSU to 9 points in a fourth quarter
Yeah.
is just tremendous. And I think that really sparked things. I mean, they scored, what was it, 47 points in the second half after only
Mm-hmm.
scoring 19 in the first half.
Yeah.
So the offense got going as well, but I was really impressed defensively, just taking LSU out of that game.
Yeah, because I mean Texas is kind of built. They're built to play from ahead, right? They're like in terms of
Yeah.
like they're not going to shoot threes. They're not going to be the team that
Mhm.
rallies. They're not going to be the team that swings
That's
the
why, honestly, I
momentum.
thought it was kind of over
Right,
when
no,
LSU
that's
goes
what I
up
was gonna get at,
12.
is like LSU went up, what, 12 at one point? You're just like,
Yeah.
"Oh, okay, like, this just might not." Like, both these teams play similarly in terms of,
Mhm.
like, philosophically, right? They use
Mhm.
size, they use defense, and it's like, okay, in order to come back into this game, you kinda gotta beat LSU and Kim Mulkey at her own game, and it's twofold. You have to score on their end, and then you have to stop them from doing the same thing, and it's like, when you're a high paced team, when you're a high tempo team, you can kind of just eventually you get threes back to back. The pace kind of goes your way, the points per possession go your way, and you can kind of keep. If you don't have the best defense, you can kind of just win your way back into it on the other end. Texas has to do it on both sides, and that's
Yeah.
what kind of really impressed me about this game is how not only against LSU, and against a team like LSU, but this is how Texas had to come back into this game was a two-sided effort. And like you
Mhm.
mentioned, it wasn't the prettiest game, but it was just about making LSU struggle more on their
Yeah.
end when they were trying to execute late.
Yeah, the physicality was really good. The thing about this going into the game, I thought Texas was going to dominate in the front court. I thought
Mm.
Jones was very good, 12 points, 5-11 shooting, 8 boards. I thought Jones and Oldecker were just going to dominate at the
Yeah.
5 position, and they really didn't.
Mm.
I was impressed with LSU's front court, like kind of not taking them away, but limiting them in a way. So once that happened, and LSU, started hitting some jump shots, I was like,
Mhm.
okay, how is Texas to get back into this? We talked about it defensively. I think offensively, first of all, Madison Booker was 0 of 11 in the first half.
I was about to say that was probably your worst game we've ever seen her play.
I mean, it was atrocious. It was
Yeah.
really bad. But in the second half, she goes, and Schaefer talked about it after the game. It's like, well, because she kept getting asked about it by the Texas media. It was like, you went 3 of 17. I love how they always kept saying the field goal, the actual like 3 of 17. I just would have been like, you didn't have a great shooting night from the field. They were like, 3 of 17, 3 of 17. So Vic was like, well, she went 3 of 6 in the second half, and she made all her free throws and stuff. And it's like, in the second half, she was much better. And the big thing here is, honestly, it's a statistical anomaly that they went 21 of 21 from the free throw line. And not to say that they're bad free throw shooters, but that is, I don't care who you are, 21 of 21 from the free throw line is incredible. So they got to the line, they made free throws. Rory Harmon in the second half, along with Booker, hit a couple of big shots. And so once the backcourt settles in, you kind of feel everybody on Texas kind of take a deep breath. It's like, all right, our guards, our best players are here now. We don't have to have everything, ugly on the inside with the bigs. We have some space now. It's just fascinating to watch Texas play basketball because they just don't even look at the 3-point line. And we've known that. It's just like seeing it in person. You're like, wow, just not even a thought. Jordan Lee hit a big one late, and Preston hit one as well. But it was 2 of 7 from 3 on the night, and Booker and Harmon were kind of living in the mid range, which we know that they do. But that was kind of the big thing in the second half. That allowed them to settle in and I think break down LSU's defense a little bit more.
It is fascinating to watch Texas when they're on a fast break because it is like, typically they flare to everybody flares to the wings and maybe have one runner with you, but it's like that's not like Texas. They kind of flare to the mid range areas, right? Like they quote unquote flare out.
The craziest thing to me, and an example of that, they ran Jordan Lee on a baseline stagger. So usually, you come off it, and I thought she was going to run to the corner because she had about, I don't know how many feet of space from her defender. And she stops at the mid range and catches and shoots it there. I'm like, wow, that's different from about 90% of other teams in the country. Because Jordan Lee can shoot the 3 ball. But she pulls up for 17, 16 footer. And that's the offense. It's really interesting to watch.
I'll say big credit as well I thought Taylor Jones was massive in this game as well, especially when Texas was struggling to find somebody to go to. She was that person who was just consistently there under the rim, right? She was able to have LSU have to worry about somebody in the post consistently. I think she finished with, 12 points in 20 minutes. And let me see. She had 12 and 8 in 20 minutes. That's insane. And I think she finished with the highest usage percentage on the team too, just because it was like, again, when Madison Booker's not going, you need some offense and somebody to score to at least mitigate the bleeding somewhat. She was that person inside. And so I got to give big credit to her. And it's kind of another testament to that depth on the inside, even without Aaliyah Moore, that they can just continue to rotate these players in. And if we're being honest, Taylor Jones may be an all-conference player on a bunch of other teams in the country. And Taylor, she just doesn't have to be that. She's a great defensive player, solid rebounder, and solid finisher. I think that she could probably be a double-double on most other teams in the state. She just doesn't have to be. And I think the fact that you can play her 15, 20 minutes and occasionally get a game like this, I think it's just an incredible value for what he's built there.
I mean, it's perfect. Both her and Oldecker played 20 minutes in this game, and she was a lot more effective than Oldecker. And that's where I actually thought LSU surprised me in the front court, able to match up with Oldecker, which I wasn't like. Samaya Smith, who we talked about, had a tremendous game for LSU, Texas native. She's about 6'3", and she's not as big as Jones, and she's not as old as Jones and Oldecker as well. And she had 3 blocks, and she was really active in there. So writing about it from LSU's perspective, I was like, that's my biggest positive from them is Samaya Smith. If she can do that, then you can compete, because that was my concern going in a lot of ways. So, to win this game where Booker just couldn't buy a shot for a majority of it, and to really, not hit threes and not. I mean, Shea Holly, 20 minutes over 1. Not that they expect her to score, but anything they get from her is icing. It's a big win. it's a really, really, I mean, it's a huge win, obviously, especially considering they were trailing, and I didn't see how they were going to win.
Yeah.
They get it at home. They wrap up a week of three, was it South Carolina to Kentucky and LSU. And even before that was Vanderbilt, who Vanderbilt's not is a ranked team, I believe, or was ranked. 4 straight ranked games, win them all. Talia Goodman had them number 1 in her poll, or in her rankings. I don't know what the latest AP women's basketball poll. That got released today, right? Or is that tomorrow? Yeah, they're number 2 now. So Texas is 2.
1, yeah, because they have the head-to-head.
Yeah, so Texas is 2, Notre Dame is 1, and like I said it last podcast. I was like, I think Texas beats LSU, and I think this is perhaps like one of the best teams in the country, and I think that we should be talking about them as such. Like, they are legitimately can beat anybody here, and I'm not just saying that as like a cliche coach speak thing, like, oh, if they play well, they can beat anybody. No, like Texas should be. If I had a vote, I'd put them number 1 on my ballot now, even though they lost to Notre Dame. Like, I think that was, however many months ago. I think they are playing the best basketball of anybody in the country.
Yeah. I think you're justified, because you were coming off a weekend where UCLA, I know it was out without Lauren Betts, but UCLA won. They lost to USC. They also almost lost to Michigan State, again, without Lauren Betts, but still. South Carolina got just pummeled by UConn. And I think we'll talk about this in bracketology, but I think that these South Carolina losses are hinting at what their weakness has been, which is that lack of a star player. And I think whatever downside we thought about UConn, the fact that Paige Beckers and AZ Fudd are healthy and play, like they're elevating what I still think is probably not one of the best teams in the country in UConn, but I think they have 2 of the best players in the country.
They have a ceiling. They have a high ceiling. Like, they can reach
exactly. Like, I think this team could go eliminated in the Sweet 16, or they could very well make it to the championship game, right? Like, as we saw with this South Carolina team, where I think South Carolina has a high floor. I think you're talking about, at the very least, an Elite 8 team, but I can also see this team, probably making it Elite 8 and then getting bounced by a team that has somebody who can drop 30 any night. So with the fact that I think Texas has, the best of both worlds right now, we know what their floor is. I think they have the highest floor of any team, of any of these teams, in my opinion, in addition to the highest ceiling possible. You're looking at a national title contender that also is, I think, a banked on Elite 8 team.
Yeah. Do we know Aaliyah Moore's status? I haven't.
I do not. Yeah, I have not. I haven't seen Danny Davis tweeting it, which he's usually my go-to when it comes to anything Texas, but I have not seen anything on her.
Yeah, I haven't, because they are going to need her back at some point.
Oh, sure.
No, 100%. I mean, Justice Carlton's a very, very good freshman, and Winatanda is very good as well, but they are not, Aaliyah Moore takes that to another level. If they have Aaliyah Moore healthy, I have no
And especially
problem.
because last year during the tournament, she really emerged as like a really, really big go-to threat.
Yeah. We'll talk a little bit more big picture with them in bracketology.
Yeah.
I did want to talk about Houston men's basketball, because Houston beat Arizona, and I got into San Antonio, and it was the second half of the game. I turned it on, and they were trailing, and all of a sudden they just did what Houston does. It's a broken record. They just shut off the water. Arizona couldn't breathe anymore. I believe it was I don't have it in front of me. It was like an 11-0 run. Arizona didn't score for like 4 minutes. And you're just like, yeah, that's what Houston does. And they get a top 15 win on the road against Arizona, and it further stretches their lead in the Big 12. Like, they're basically locked in to win the Big 12 at this point. They're 13-1 with 6 games remaining.
Yeah.
So obviously we'll see. They have Iowa State and Texas Tech still, and Kansas, but I mean, they are playing on another level of anybody else in this conference right now, and they're just that good.
The Big 12 tournament's gonna be a bloodbath. I'll tell you that much.
Once it gets to the second round.
What was it?
Get all the Oklahoma State, Colorados out of there.
Yeah, they can all leave. But yes, the second round going forward is gonna be a bloodbath, because, like, if I'm being honest, I forgot about Arizona as far as like a contender, right? We got so focused on Houston, Tech, and Iowa State that I was like, and Kansas, and I was like, Arizona State, or Arizona's ranked. I was watching this game, I was like, geez, they're 13. I completely just like lost track of Arizona.
Yep.
And yeah, at one point I was like, is this going to be another game where Houston just, kind of like the Tech game where they just let a game slip that they should win,
Yeah.
and Arizona plays with their hair on fire, and it's just like, oh, boom, Houston's at home. We're gonna, have this great crowd and pull this off. And like you said, man, Arizona, I think they finally hit a three. I think it was late. I think it was like under 2 minutes to go. They finally hit a three that they needed. It was like a contested three that cut it to one. And like I felt like at least it's like, oh dang, was that it? Was that the one they needed just to see go through? And then they kind of continue with it. But no, like Houston, for everything that all the issues I've had this year, I think they've made up for it in the fact that they're just a team that can get a bucket when they need it. And like at times where I saw Kelvin Sampson teams like really struggle, really try to figure out like, is it Jamal Shed? Is it, Cryer hoisting up a random shot? Is it Roberts in the post just kind of trying to figure something? Like they have multiple guys like an Emmanuel Sharp who late can get in the lane and get a floater, right? And like it feels like, I don't know, it does feel like where they maybe aren't as locked down defensively, they've gotten a little bit more decisive or confident offensively in the non-structured part of the game, right? When it's not a set that they're running, when it's something that they just need to find a quick shot.
Yeah. Uzan ends the game, the MVP in Ken Palm, and I completely agree. 19 points, 5 assists, 0 turnovers, 7 of 11 from 2, 1 of 1 from 3. He was tremendous. Emmanuel Sharp, I don't follow Houston in terms of like their beat reporter, but he's still not 100%. Like he's not playing extended minutes here. He played 22 minutes, 0 points, 0 of 6 from 3. It doesn't look like he's back yet.
No, he doesn't. Right. And like because he had that injury. What was the injury? What was the game he got hurt in, or he didn't finish the game? Was it the Tech game?
I'll go look. Yes, the Tech game.
Yeah. So like, I don't know if it's been an extension of that or what, but I think that, I don't know, this year in particular, I think last year that injury hurts him a lot more than this year. I think the fact that you have Milos with Cryer, with Arsenal off the bench, with, Javier Francis didn't have a great scoring game, but I think he's a little bit more confident in his scoring ability. Tugler definitely is. So I think this year, I wonder if it's just a play into kind of play him healthy a little bit, where he's like maybe 70%. He's just like, I'm good enough to play. But yeah, it is something to keep track of definitely going forward.
Yeah. I'm just, and again, we can look at it on Bracketology, but and maybe this can be a transition over there unless you have something else on Houston specifically.
Nope,
Houston is a 2 seed on CBS's Bracketology, which is good. Because I feel like for the past month, they've been stuck in like that 3-4 range. And I'm officially washing my hands of all those November losses. I know they have to count, right? They have to matter when you're seeding teams in the tournament. I understand that. Auburn, Alabama, and San Diego State losses. But I just think this team is too good to hold that against them. Like a November 30th loss to San Diego State right now. I think they're playing significantly better. Like that team, this team compared to that team. I remember watching that San Diego State game and being like, I don't know if they have it this year. I was like, they look bad. Yeah. And again, they lost in overtime to Alabama and San Diego State. So there's not even bad losses, but it's just like they didn't look energetic. They didn't look enthused the way that we've known them to be. And since then, obviously, they've rolled off 17-1, and they've been incredible. So I'm just like, the way that this team is playing right now, to me, is that of a 1 seed, is that of a top 4 team in the country. And they'll get there if they, continue to win games. But I'm just like, right now at this moment, I think this is a top 4 team in the country.
I think that's fair. I agree with that. I'll say. I think where I'm going to get interested in the seeding is I don't think we go with 3. Right now they have 3 SEC teams as the ones. I don't think that happens.
I agree. Yes.
I do think there's another one there for the taking potentially for them. Let me check because like A&M's a 2.
Here, let me see if I can bring it up on the screen.
Purdue's a 2, CBS Houston's a 2, A&M and Tennessee. So I don't think we get 3 SEC, right? I think Bama. If I had to bet now, Bama, Auburn, probably my number ones. And I think there's a slot for Houston. I really do. Or, I mean, again, we'll see. We'll talk about them in a bit. If some run happens with Tech, I think there's an outside chance for them as well. But I think right now I'd probably put money on Houston being that other number one.
Mm-hmm.
Let me double check on who the other ones are.
It's Duke. I pulled it up on the screen. Duke, Florida.
Duke was the other one. So again, I'd put money on Duke, right? I think
Yeah.
I'd put money on Duke being the one, Auburn, and one of Alabama, Florida, Tennessee. I think one of those teams are pretty easy, but I don't think they get three.
I agree.
But yeah, I do think like they've righted the ship, like you mentioned, and the win against Arizona, the impressive nature of these wins. Let me double check. Baylor, Arizona. If they go into, I think if they split Iowa State Tech, I still think they're in shot for a one. They can't lose both, but if they split those games, I think they're still in line. Because the resume, like you said, the resume is there. Those losses came in November, right? Of course, you have the loss to Tech, but again, Tech hasn't fallen off, so like that loss isn't detrimental. And then even if they lose on the road, like that's a road loss to Tech, so like it wouldn't be detrimental, I think, to their resume at all. So, long story short, I do think this team has the capabilities. I think they are a top 4 team, and I do think they're still a very good shot at a 1 seed overall, or not overall 1 seed, but a 1 seed in the tournament.
Yeah, 1 seed. So yeah, there's Houston. They have them down here in Duke's region, which would be very interesting here. Michigan 3 seed.
Yeah.
And so on. What's the next team you want to talk about here?
I mean, you want to go right to Tech?
Yes, I do.
Yeah, let's go. I mean, look, this team's surging at the right point. The loss to Arizona stinks right last week, but I think they've had one scary loss that you had to, or scary win that you had to just come through that we talked about against Arizona State. And then they just pummeled Oklahoma State. And I'm back on my JT Toppin for Big 12 Player of the Year bandwagon. He just has to stay healthy, but he dropped, what was it in this game? He dropped 32 and 10 and 3 blocks and 2 assists against Oklahoma State. Again, Oklahoma State stinks, but that's what you're supposed to do to get this resume to look nice. And they have a couple games coming up that can really polish that resume. They cannot have another letdown loss like they did against UCF, right? So they have to beat TCU. They have to beat West Virginia. If they beat, which I think they're capable, if they beat Houston and Kansas, I think they're in line. They could be in line for an outside shot competing for the 1. I don't think they'll get it. I think that's going to Fog Allen, but there is a path there still for Tech to control potentially. Think about that. The fact that they can even if they get a 2, I think they're very much in line for a 2. If they get a 1 seed, like I think that's just, we're talking far away Coach of the Year type of work. Yeah.
This would have Texas Tech as the 3, Tennessee as the 2 seed in this region, with Alabama as the 1. I'm probably going to have Texas Tech going way too far in my bracket.
I'm very much afraid
of
the same thing.
I love them so much, and I'm scared I'm going to get hurt.
Yeah, I am terrified.
Yeah. Who's next? Texas A&M.
I'm looking at this West region right now, real quick. I'm looking at this West region.
On CBS or on ESPN?
I'm looking at ESPN right now.
Okay, what do they have?
A&M 2. I like Tech versus A. I like that in the rematch with JT Toppin.
They have ESPN has A&M as 2, Texas Tech as a 3 in that region?
Yeah, in the West region.
That's sick.
Yeah. Let me look. Tech is in the same side of the bracket as, let's see, UCLA, BYU, St. Mary's, A&M. Yeah, this team is making an Elite 8 if this was the bracket. Like, I'm putting this team as an Elite 8 team. And then Florida's the 1, Memphis, Wisconsin, UConn.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. This team's making the Final Four. This is my bracket. I'm probably putting him in the Final Four. And I hate it because like there's no way the good vibes just keep going that well.
Right. It's like everything's going so well. You're just waiting for a letdown at this point.
They're gonna lose like TCU. Watch.
Something's got to stop. I went to Joe Lenardi hasn't updated in 3 days, so I was like, nope, he's not getting my click.
Yeah, you're looking at the more updated one.
A&M, but regardless, A&M is a 2 seed over here. Mm-hmm. I feel good about A&M, but I'm not head over heels about them. I do think their floor is higher than like a Texas Tech.
I was going to say, I was talking to some of my friends who are A&M fans, and they both won. They texted me. It was like, Let me see. There was a funny way they put it, but it was basically, you remember the gif I sent you of the guy throwing the ball off the backboard?
Yeah.
And somebody quote tweeting it saying this is just A&M basketball.
Yes.
They basically texted me the exact same thing. It was like, this is the most disgusting basketball I've ever watched. I love it. That kind of thing. And he's like, and we were saying, like, we both agree that it's like this team could very much. This team has the makings of a team that could go out weekend one by the way they play, because the free throws just don't fall or something, right? The offense just hits a wall, or a team that everybody hates watching, and then all of a sudden they're in the Elite Eight. And you're just like, what, like somebody beat this team, like how Syracuse used to be. There's like somebody beat this team, and there's like nobody can guard Wade Taylor and Zurich Phelps. They're combining for 30 free throws, and the score is 58-49. And it's just like, all right, nobody likes watching it, but Buzz Williams is just like playing disgusting ball all the way till mid-March.
Yeah, that's A&M's going to be a team I don't know what to do with at this point. Baylor, they have him penciled in as an 8.
Yeah.
Over here.
Here it is. The exact quote from my friend who's an A&M fan. We're going to he texted me, we're going to have to talk about at some point about how this Aggie basketball team is absolutely repulsive to watch and how somehow continues to win. And he listed like all these different things about like shoot the worst possible shots imaginable. Number 2, offensive rebound. Number 3, putback. Number 4, god awful at free throws will almost certainly be the downfall in the tournament, but I love watching them and I can't look away.
Yes, exactly. Welcome to the Buzz Williams experience. We're having
welcome to the show, baby.
Yes. Duke as an 8 seed feels fair. I think in KenPom they're like 26 or so. Not that KenPom it's used. It's one of the metrics, but that would put them at like 20. If they were 26, they would be in line for, I think, like a 7 or so. I do think the difference between an 8 and a 7 is substantial, just because you don't have to play a 1 seed. Like, I don't think they have a shot in the world against Duke.
I was about to say, this team is very much.
If they played Wisconsin,
I don't see a high ceiling on this Baylor team.
Yeah, like if Baylor played a non-1 seed, then I'd feel okay. But like if they play Duke, if they play Auburn, if they play Alabama, I don't see it. So you have Edgecombe playing well. You hope that they can kind of figure out the guard spot with Roach and Wright, who have been fine. But just the lack of physicality defensively just puts a very, very low ceiling on them.
I mean, Kansas, I'm trying to correct me if I'm wrong. I think Kansas is their only, which again, great win, but Kansas is their only win inside like the top 40 of KenPom. I'm looking at it right now. Like every other team they've lost. Okay, they beat Arkansas. It was 39 at the beginning of the year. But like they have not beaten a team. Okay, it was West Virginia. Sorry, correction. 46, their last one.
No, you're right. They are, well, St. John's. St. John's was the big one. They are.
Okay, yes, good point.
But still, what is this? 4-7 in quad 1 games, 4-8, somewhere around there.
Yeah, it's not good. Like I said, we'll talk about teams with ceilings and floors in a bit. I don't think this team has a high ceiling. I think this team is what it is. I think this team is I mean, if I had to guess, I'd probably put them out weekend 1. I wouldn't feel bad about it. I don't know. They just aren't what they are at this point. I couldn't bet. They have the talent. I just have not seen it on the court this year to be able to put this team as a sleeper or a dark horse.
Then look at this. Texas up here in the 11 slot.
You want to talk about a team that
they beat Kentucky.
Above all rationale, could have a high ceiling.
They could.
Above all rationale.
They could.
Because they just got the guy. And sometimes if you just got the guy, he can drop 32 on Kentucky in a game that you should lose probably 9 out of 10 times.
I'll throw Tremont Mark in there.
It's going to be interesting because if they get the right matchups, like BYU, I like it.
Yeah.
I like it.
I think Tremont Mark I'll throw in there. Obviously not as good as Johnson, but like Mark is a flammable guy as well. So he scored, I think, 24, 26 against Kentucky. So it's like, hey, if he can get going, you have that. Kaluma hasn't played the past few games. So if they get him back and he plays well, like this is definitely, there's always 11 seeds. What is the past like 6-7 years? There's been an 11 seed that's made it to the the round of 32 or something like that, or round of 16 or something.
I mean, look, the 6 seeds are Mississippi State, Illinois, Clemson, Ole Miss.
Yeah, Texas.
Texas can beat those teams.
Yeah, it's the SEC. I mean, they've played in this conference, so
Yeah.
just keep playing. But that's the last one on the men's side, I believe. We don't have anybody in Texas Southern, unfortunately. I think is at like 4 losses now since we've talked about them.
We should mention Texas probably can't afford to drop any games that they shouldn't lose here on out because it's
starting. They are on the bubble.
Their last 4 in, so
yes, they are on the bubble here. This is not a comfortable spot for Texas to be. Yeah, last 4 in right here. The net and KenPom and stuff, I feel like if they just take care of like the games they should win.
Yeah, if they go 500, I think they got 1, 2, 3, 4. They got 5 games. If they go 3-2,
yeah,
maybe they can drop one extra 2 and 3, but they can't go like 1 or 4, barring some tournament run or whatever. But I'd feel comfortable if they won 3 of the next 5.
Yeah, and it's not a hard stretch. South Carolina, Arkansas, Georgia, Mississippi State, Oklahoma. You should win 3 out of those 5.
Yes.
So, all right. The women's side has updated on ESPN, so we can
shout out Charlie Cream.
Yeah, shout out Charlie Cream for actually doing his job.
Shout out to Lenardi, man.
Unlike the Lenardi guy over there, just cruising in February. This is the time where you got to make your money, and you're just all right. Anyway, updating every 3 days is crazy. That's all I'm saying. All right, who do we have in here? First one we got to look at is Texas. Where's Texas?
Texas is number 2 overall.
I just pulled up the men's bracket. Nicely done.
He has UCLA number 1, Texas number 2. I guess I'm a little surprised that the UCLA is still holding on to the number 1 overall, but maybe not. Maybe he just doesn't take the Michigan State one into.
Maybe from a resume standpoint, I guess I could get it. Because I mean, UCLA's loss was on the road, technically USC.
True.
If we get Texas as a 1 seed and TCU as a 2 seed, I will send a bouquet of flowers to whoever sets up the bracket. I need that matchup.
Oh my God.
In the Elite 8. That would be one of the great games in this podcast's history.
Although it would suck that it would be in Birmingham.
Well, what's the other option? Spokane, Washington?
You go from Austin to Fort Worth, and then they just fly to Birmingham. Like it is a little anticlimactic, but the match.
Again, I don't know who sets up these locations. Birmingham and Spokane, Washington are the 2 locations here.
It's not great.
I mean, literally, you could pick a lot of different cities. But regardless, Texas 1 seed, TCU 2 seed. TCU is playing really well. I think in the Big 12, I don't see them like having problems here. Mm-hmm. The problem, as we've talked about, I think, is still when you play against physical teams that can take you kind of out of your offensive flow. But like, you're not going to play that as a 7. Like Louisville's not going to take them out of their offense. I mean, Maryland, North Carolina, like Alabama. I'm just talking about teams here. Like Ole Miss could, but we'll see how the matchups go. So I'm just like, TCU, I think, regardless of us being, or maybe me being like, they are kind of top heavy. I don't know, like, if they can do it against the top teams. They should be able to get through the first weekend pretty comfortably, I think, and then you kind of play from there.
Yeah, they might end up getting that too, because they have a big game against West Virginia coming up.
Yes.
Houston and then Baylor. And again, Baylor, it was a close game against Baylor. So I don't want to say that those are shoo-ins by any means, but if they take care, I think if they go 2-1 in that stretch, even, I think that's still good enough for a 2. That puts them, like you mentioned, the 7s around Charlie's bracketology are Louisville, Georgia Tech, Vanderbilt, Florida State. Vanderbilt's interesting.
Yeah, Vanderbilt.
But I don't, like you said, I don't see one where, that's upset watch necessarily. I'm trying to think of the 6s. Ole Miss, Michigan. You mentioned Ole Miss. I think that's a pretty good shout as well. One that could give them trouble, but none that I'm like kind of seething or like, seething at the mouth to like pen in over TCU. I think I'm comfortable with them as a team that advances out of the first weekend.
Yeah. Who else do we have here? Where's Baylor on?
Baylor's a 5 in the Lexington.
5. Yeah, they've picked up.
Listen, look at that second round matchup potentially.
Okay, look, UTSA is a 13 seed for those listening here,
Yeah.
and they're in the same section
Buddy,
as Baylor here. So in theory, we could get a Baylor versus UTSA matchup, which would be phenomenal.
of course, UTSA would have to pull a massive upset, but
Yeah,
like
that is a massive upset
you
here.
look,
Now,
look, all I'm going to say is you want a style of basketball that can get it done
yeah.
and pull that massive upset.
So
It is
here's the thing.
UTSA against that Kentucky team's front court, and then
Yes.
UTSA against that Baylor team's front court.
Yes.
That's all I'm going to say. I think safe bet, still pick Kentucky, all that stuff, but I'm just going to say matchups are everything in this tournament, and that is a matchup I want to see.
Kentucky just lost to Ole Miss and got dominated on the boards, got dominated physically. Like this is a team for Kentucky that is kind of built around their guards a lot more. So if UTSA gets in a spot where they play, if UTSA gets in the tournament and they play a 4 seed, I want them to play Kentucky.
Yes.
Like let me look at the other 4s. I don't want them to play Tennessee. That would be a track meet they don't want to play.
Yeah.
No. I don't want them to play Oklahoma with Reagan Beers that can just beat them up a little bit.
Right.
I want them to play Kentucky, and I want them to be the more physical team. And I think
if I could just transpose this bracket, this exact bracket, because I would love to see Kentucky and I would love to see them against Baylor. Because I just think that team is just bred to bully these kind of teams on a national stage. And I'm like, even if it's close heading to the 4th, like if we get like a Rice LSU situation where it's just like, what's the score going on here? What's happening here? And they end up winning or losing to Kentucky anyway. Like I want the right matchup to have a good game. And I think this one, 13 seed, crossing fingers again. I'm hoping on it because I think Kentucky, Oklahoma, who's the other 4? Tennessee and Ohio State. Yeah, I'd take Kentucky.
Yeah, me too. I don't think they can get a 12 without looking too deep into it. But like again, the loss to A&M early in the year, which we talked about when it happened, hurts.
Yeah,
those
right.
type.
Yeah, that's a good point. If they beat A&M, we're maybe talking about a potential
12. For sure. Baylor too. I don't know. We kind of skipped over Baylor there. Baylor, I think, as a 5 is comfortable about where we would expect them to go. If they win the Big 12, which is still a possibility, they definitely could get into a 4 seed. And for those who don't know, like in the women's game, if you're a top 4 seed, you're hosting.
Yep.
And that's huge. Like Baylor at home, as opposed to having to go to Kentucky to play that game is
especially
massive.
because let's talk about the history. Like Baylor's used to hosting these things, and they have not hosted in a while. And so, like, I think that'd be a rejuvenated fan base that is wanting to probably host a first round game that they haven't. I think the last time they did was Mulkey. When they won the national title. I think
they didn't host. What was Collins' first year?
I don't. Did they maybe host the?
They had to have hosted.
They might have hosted the first year, but again, it's been a while. For Baylor standards, it's been a while for a team that's used to hosting in March.
I'm curious now.
Yeah. It might have been because I was the Melissa Smith year. So
I was like, man, if they didn't host because you might be right. I know. I mean, last year they had to beat Virginia Tech at Virginia Tech to get out of that, and then played USC. Baylor hosted. They were a 2 seed, but they lost. They lost to South Dakota in the second round.
I remember that. Yeah. That was the incredible shooting performance that we saw from South Dakota. Oh, okay, I do remember that. So they haven't hosted since, which again, Baylor wants to host some basketball games or women's basketball, like the Farrell. Yes, I keep forgetting which one the new one's called. Farrell is ripe for hosting, and that women's environment would be amazing if they hosted. So yes, that 4 seed, not out of the realm yet. They're up. Charlie Cream had him. I think he had him as a 6 last week or last time. They're already moving up a little bit. If they upset TCU, if they get something of a game that they quote unquote shouldn't get, it's still on the table. It is still on the table.
Yes, absolutely.
Let me check their final score, their schedule exactly. I know TCU is next week or this weekend. Sorry, they have here it is. Colorado, Iowa State. Iowa State's gonna be tough, but Colorado should win. Oh man, Kansas State and TCU. I think if they go 3-1, I think it's still on the table.
Yeah.
And barring not being let down in the tournament or anything, so I still think it's on the table if they go 3-1.
The last team we have here on the women's side is Texas Southern, who Started off 11-0 in conference, has now lost 2 in a row.
Yeah.
But don't panic. Don't panic,
We're still
everybody.
here.
They're still here. They're still in position to
Yep.
potentially win the conference. The rest of their schedule is not super tough besides at Jackson State, so that's kind of a tricky one. But at Southern, I know is tough, so that's not a bad loss. But if Texas Southern gets in here, I'm assuming they'll be in the in the play-in if they get in, which a win in the tournament is a win in the tournament.
I was about to say it counts.
Personally, I love having the 16s play each other.
Yeah.
Just on both sides. I know some people are like, well, it's like they're not in the tournament. To me, I think it's awesome because I think getting a win at that point is huge. And you just, especially in the women's game, bro, it's the 116s are like 60-point games.
Right, exactly. It's like you get it counts. The playing game counts for me when it comes to the 16s.
Yeah,
especially.
I mean that is such a big moment. Even just getting in the tournament and then not having to play UCLA first, right? You play NCAA, like you actually have a shot at winning the game here.
Right, exactly.
So if Texas Southern, that's one we will continue to track. Texas Southern, they have lost 2 in a row. Hope they can get back on track here because that would be awesome. We've been waiting for the Texas Southern men always are in the tournament. Now we want the women to get in there as well. I think that's all we have, right? I'm not missing anybody. Texas Tech's definitely not in. Who I'm trying to just go off the top of my head. SFA is not in. The Southland's not. The Southeastern is 16-0 in the Southland now.
Yeah.
So obviously it's a one bid league. So maybe Lamar can make a push. Maybe Lamar can win the tournament. But Southeastern is 16-0 right now. They're terrifying. So I think this actually has them playing. Yeah, has them playing LSU Southeastern as a 15.
Dang.
Open, I clicked on it. So that's how good they're playing. They're
so for the tournament, we got to hope for the tournament.
Yes. So that's what we'll be watching for. All right, that's all we had for y'all today. Hope y'all enjoyed it. Leave us a like, comment, share, subscribe if you haven't already. We'll be back later this week to recap some more games as we approach the end of February ish. It's almost March.
We're so close. We're about to be doing our brackets.
Yes, it's insane. But yeah, thank y'all for joining us. Leave a like, comment, share, subscribe if you haven't already. We will talk to y'all later.